I can still hear the shouting. It wasn't loud at first, just murmurs and whispers. But it grew, a mix of voices, some angry, some excited, some that sounded almost nervous. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I was. It was December 30, 2006. Early morning, still dark outside. The room smelled of sweat and dust, the air thick with something I can't describe. The people around me were tense, shifting on their feet, whispering to each other. Some held their arms crossed tight over their chests. Some clenched their fists. Everyone was watching the same thing: Saddam Hussein. He stood in the center of the room, hands tied behind his back. His beard had gone gray. His face looked older, thinner than in the photos had grown up seeing. But his eyes were steady. He didn't look afraid. He didn't beg. He just stood there, listening to the men shouting at him. I had expected him to be shaking. I had expected some sign of fear, but there was nothing. They started taunting him, calling him names. Someone shouted a curse, mentioning Muqtada al-Sadr, the Shia cleric whose men had fought against him. That was when Saddam reacted. He smirked. It wasn't big, just a twitch at the corner of his mouth, but I saw it. Then he spoke, his voice deep but rough, like he hadn't had water in a long time. "Is this how real men behave?" he said. The room went quiet for a second, just a second. Then the shouting started again. A man stepped forward and tied a black cloth around Saddam's neck, just below his jaw. Another one held the rope, the noose thick and rough looking. He pulled it over Saddam's head and tightened it. Someone asked him if he had any last words. Saddam lifted his chin slightly. His expression never changed. And he said, "Iraq will fall into chaos." He then looked around the room, as if memorizing the faces. Then he started reciting the Shahada, the Islamic declaration of faith, that there is no other God but Almighty. Then the trapdoor opened. I heard the thud. His body dropped fast. For half a second, the rope swung. A man next to me gasped. Then silence. It only lasted a moment before the room exploded with noise. Some men cheered, some clapped, others just stared down into the hole. The guards moved forward quickly, trying to get a closer look. Someone held up a phone, recording the whole thing. The video will leak to the world later, but in that moment, it was just us, standing over the body of a man who had once ruled Iraq with an iron fist. I didn't move. I couldn't. My heart was pounding. I forced myself to look down. His head had twisted sharply. His eyes were open. One of the men near me muttered a prayer under his breath. Another one spat on the ground. No one touched the body right away. It just hung there, still. After a while, someone stepped forward and pulled the rope to stop it from swinging. It was over. The room started to empty out. Some men left, talking loudly, full of energy. Others walked out in silence, their hands in their pockets, their shoulders tense. I left too, stepping out into the cold morning air. For a long time, I didn't know how to feel. I grew up hearing stories about Saddam Hussein. The fear, the killings, the wars. But I also knew men who had served him. Men who still respected him. Iraq was full of ghosts from this time. And even in death, he didn't seem completely gone. That was the morning Saddam Hussein left. I was there, and I still don't know what to think.